Hello there, and welcome back to the Cozy Curiosity channel. I'm so glad you've returned to this quiet corner of the internet. The world keeps spinning, always demanding attention. But here we can pause. Here we can let our minds wander through questions that have no easy answers, ideas that stretch back through centuries, and mysteries that live inside each of us. Tonight, we're exploring consciousness again. That strange, luminous phenomenon that makes you, you. We'll journey through 100 more fascinating facts about awareness, perception, and the inner life of the mind. Some will feel comforting, others might unsettle you in the best possible way. And before we drift into these ideas together, if you find these explorations helpful, if they give you a peaceful way to end your day or feed your curiosity, consider leaving a like or sharing your thoughts below. It helps this quiet channel reach others who might need it. Now, settle in. Let your breathing slow. And let's begin. Consciousness may have evolved multiple times independently. Scientists studying different branches of life have found that creatures as distant from us as octopuses, bees, and birds all show signs of awareness, despite having completely different brain structures. This suggests consciousness isn't one thing that appeared once and spread through evolution. Instead, it may have emerged separately, multiple times, wherever nervous systems grew complex enough to need integrated information processing. Like eyes evolving independently in different species, awareness might be a solution that nature discovers again and again. Each version could work differently under the surface, while producing similar outward signs. This possibility means consciousness might be less rare in the universe than we think, a natural consequence of certain kinds of complexity, rather than a unique accident that happened only in our evolutionary line. The fact that awareness arose in mollusks, insects, and mammals from entirely separate origins suggests it's almost inevitable once certain organizational principles are met. The brain uses more energy when doing nothing than when focused. When you're resting with your mind wandering, the brain's default mode network activates, consuming significant energy as it reviews memories, imagines scenarios, and maintains your sense of self. Counterintuitively, focusing on a specific task often requires less total energy because it narrows activity to specialized regions. This baseline level of activity, the brain's idle state, uses about 20% of the body's total energy, despite the brain being only 2% of body weight. The constant background hum of consciousness, even when you think you're doing nothing, represents enormous metabolic work. Your brain is never truly at rest, always maintaining the stage on which conscious experience unfolds. Even in sleep, significant energy expenditure continues, suggesting consciousness operates on multiple levels simultaneously, some accessible to awareness, and others running in deeper darkness. Some people can control their heart rate through thought alone. With training, certain individuals can slow or speed their heartbeat significantly using only mental focus. This ability, often developed through practices like yoga, meditation, or biofeedback, shows that the boundary between voluntary and involuntary bodily functions isn't absolute. By bringing conscious attention to normally automatic processes and learning to recognize subtle internal sensations, people can gain surprising degrees of control. The mechanism involves the autonomic nervous system, which usually operates below awareness. Consciousness, when properly trained and directed, can reach down into these deeper layers of physiology, suggesting that the mind's influence over the body extends far beyond what we typically access in daily life. Some practitioners can even influence their body temperature, immune responses, and pain perception through sustained mental practice, demonstrating that consciousness can serve as a bridge between intentional thought and supposedly automatic biological processes. Certain brain injuries can eliminate all sense of fear. Damage to the amygdala, a small almond-shaped structure deep in the brain, can result in a complete inability to experience fear. One famous case involved a woman who couldn't feel fear, even in situations that would terrify most people, like handling venomous snakes or watching horror films designed to trigger terror. While this might sound liberating, fear serves essential protective functions. Without it, people can't properly assess danger or learn from threatening situations. This condition reveals that emotions aren't just feelings floating freely in consciousness. They're specific neural processes that can be selectively disrupted. Our conscious emotional landscape depends on particular brain regions doing their jobs correctly, and when they fail, entire dimensions of experience can simply vanish. The woman in question could still feel other emotions like happiness and sadness, showing that the emotional architecture of consciousness is modular, built from separate components that can be individually damaged. The sensation of free will may be an illusion created after decisions are made. In groundbreaking experiments by Benjamin Libet and others, researchers found that brain activity indicating a decision occurs several seconds before people report consciously choosing to act. This suggests the unconscious brain may make decisions first, with conscious awareness of choosing arising afterward as a kind of narrative the mind tells itself. The implications are profound and unsettling. If our sense of making choices happens after the choice is already in motion, what does that mean for free will and moral responsibility? Some scientists argue this shows consciousness is more of an observer than a driver, a narrator constructing stories about decisions already made by unconscious processes. Others maintain that unconscious processing is still part of who we are, making the decision genuinely ours, even if awareness comes late to the party. The debate continues, but it has fundamentally changed how neuroscientists think about volition and the experience of choosing. Babies may be conscious before birth. Studies of fetal brain activity suggest that organized neural patterns resembling consciousness appear in the third trimester of pregnancy. Fetuses respond to sounds, show different states of rest and activity, and may even dream, though what they might dream about remains a mystery. The question of when consciousness begins has profound ethical and philosophical implications, yet no scientific consensus exists. Some researchers argue that without certain cortical connections that develop after birth, fetal awareness must be fundamentally different from postnatal consciousness. Others suggest a continuum, with rudimentary awareness gradually becoming more complex. The mystery of when you began remains one of the most personal questions science struggles to answer. Does consciousness flicker on at some specific moment, or does it gradually brighten like a sunrise over months of development? Mirror self-recognition appears in only a few species. When animals see themselves in a mirror, most react as if they're seeing another animal, either displaying aggression, fear, or social behavior. But a small group, including great apes, elephants, dolphins, and magpies, eventually recognize the reflection as themselves, often by touching a mark placed on their body that they can only see in the mirror. This ability suggests a level of self-awareness, a mental model of oneself as a distinct entity that can be observed from outside. The test isn't perfect. Some animals may be conscious without caring about mirrors, or may not rely on vision as their primary sense. But it offers a rare window into how other species might experience selfhood, and reminds us that the sense of I that feels so obvious to humans may be rarer in nature than we assume. It's worth noting that human children don't pass the mirror test until around 18 months of age, suggesting self-awareness develops gradually rather than existing from birth. Your brain predicts what you'll see before you see it. Perception isn't passive reception of sensory data. The brain constantly generates predictions about incoming sensory information based on past experience, context, and expectations. And what you consciously perceive is actually a blend of these predictions and actual sensory data. Most of the time, predictions match reality closely enough that you don't notice the process happening. But when they don't, you experience surprise or confusion as the brain updates its model. This predictive processing means consciousness is less about receiving raw data from the world and more about testing and updating internal models. In a sense, you're always experiencing a controlled hallucination, one that usually matches reality, because evolution has refined your brain's predictions over millions of years. When predictions go wrong, you get optical illusions, magic tricks, and those moments when you mistake a stranger for a friend from behind. Consciousness can be disrupted by magnets. Transcranial magnetic stimulation, TMS, uses powerful magnetic fields to temporarily interfere with activity in specific brain regions. Depending on where the magnetic pulse is aimed, people may experience disrupted speech, altered perception, or changes in mood and judgment. The effects are temporary and harmless when properly administered, but they demonstrate how fragile and dependent on precise electrical patterns conscious experience really is. A brief magnetic pulse, lasting mere milliseconds, can make you unable to name objects, see certain colors, or retrieve specific memories. This vulnerability shows that consciousness isn't a robust, independent entity existing somehow above or beyond the brain. It's a delicate pattern of electrical activity that can be disturbed by outside forces in ways both subtle and profound. Some researchers are exploring whether TMS could help treat depression, addiction, and other conditions by carefully modulating consciousness in therapeutic ways. Some meditation practices aim to eliminate thought entirely, while many meditation techniques focus on calming or observing thoughts. Certain advanced practices in Zen Buddhism, Advaita Vedanta, and other traditions aim for a state where thinking stops completely. Practitioners describe this not as unconsciousness or sleep, but as pure awareness without content, a knowing without anything being known, consciousness without an object. Brain scans during these states show dramatically reduced activity in language areas and the default mode network, the regions normally generating the constant internal narrative. Whether this represents a higher or deeper form of consciousness, or something different entirely, remains debated among researchers and contemplatives alike. But it challenges the assumption that consciousness requires thought, suggesting awareness and thinking might be separable processes. The mind can be awake, alert, and present without the constant stream of mental commentary most of us experience as normal, as fundamental to being conscious at all. Time can speed up as you age, because each year is a smaller fraction of your life. When you're 5 years old, 1 year represents 20% of your entire life experience. When you're 50, it's only 2%. This proportional difference may explain why time seems to accelerate as we age, a nearly universal human experience that has puzzled people for centuries. Each new experience is compared against the vast database of past experiences, and as that database grows, individual moments become less novel, less memorable, and less likely to slow down our perception of time's passage. Consciousness doesn't experience time objectively. It constructs the sensation of duration based on memory, novelty, and attention. As life becomes more routine and predictable, fewer distinct memories form, making months and years seem to slip by faster and faster. The only remedy seems to be seeking new experiences, learning new skills, traveling to unfamiliar places, activities that force the brain to pay closer attention and form richer, more detailed memories that stretch the subjective sense of time. Anesthesia doesn't always erase memory of surgery. Even when people report no conscious awareness during surgery, some show signs of implicit memory that something happened. They might develop preferences for songs played during the operation, or show stress responses to words spoken while they were supposedly unconscious, or demonstrate learning effects they shouldn't have if they were truly absent during the procedure. These findings suggest that information processing can continue at some level, even when conscious awareness is chemically suppressed. The brain may be receiving and storing information, while the mechanisms that create reportable experience are offline. This gap between processing and conscious awareness raises uncomfortable questions about what happens to us during anesthesia and whether being unconscious is as complete and absolute as we'd like to believe. It also has implications for how we should treat unconscious patients, suggesting that even when people can't form explicit memories, some part of their mind might still be absorbing what's happening around them. Certain drugs can make minutes feel like hours or even years. Under the influence of high doses of psychedelics like DMT or salvia divinorum, people consistently report experiences that feel far longer than the actual elapsed time, sometimes dramatically so. A 5-minute trip might feel like days, years, or even entire lifetimes lived in another reality. Brain activity during these states shows disrupted connectivity between regions that normally maintain temporal coherence, the neural networks that give us our sense of existing in a continuous timeline. When those patterns are disrupted, consciousness loses its temporal anchor. The experience can be profound and sometimes disturbing, especially when someone feels they've lived decades only to find themselves back in their body minutes later. It's a stark reminder that our sense of existing in time is actively constructed by the brain and can be radically altered by changes in brain chemistry. You can be conscious during a coma, trapped and unable to respond. Some patients diagnosed as comatose or in persistent vegetative states are actually in a state called cognitive motor dissociation, fully conscious but unable to move or communicate through standard bedside tests. Advanced brain imaging has revealed that as many as 15 to 20% of patients thought to be completely unconscious show neural responses to commands like "imagine playing tennis" or "imagine walking through your house." These patients can hear, understand, and sometimes even experience pain, while appearing entirely unresponsive to doctors and family members at the bedside. The discovery has revolutionized care for brain-injured patients and highlights one of consciousness research's most haunting challenges: detecting awareness in people who cannot demonstrate it through movement or speech. For the person trapped inside, it can be a nightmare of isolation. Hearing loved ones discuss end-of-life decisions while being unable to signal that they're still present, still aware, still very much themselves inside an unresponsive body. Consciousness has no known location in the brain. Despite decades of searching with increasingly sophisticated tools, scientists haven't found a single region or structure that generates consciousness by itself. Instead, awareness seems to emerge from patterns of activity across distributed networks. The thalamus acts as a relay hub for sensory information. The cortex processes detailed information about the world. The brainstem regulates arousal and basic wakefulness. And the claustrum may help coordinate activity across regions. But none alone is sufficient for consciousness. Damage any one part severely enough, and consciousness can be disrupted or lost. But awareness seems to be what happens when these regions communicate in specific ways, a process rather than a place. This distributed nature makes consciousness remarkably resilient. Damage to individual areas can alter experience without eliminating it entirely. But it also makes consciousness harder to study and understand, impossible to locate on a brain scan with a simple "you are here" marker. Dreams can solve problems that stumped you while awake. Many famous discoveries, from the structure of the benzene molecule to the design of the sewing machine needle, reportedly came to people in dreams. During REM sleep, the brain makes unusual associations between memories and concepts, freed from waking logic's constraints and the critical, analytical mode that dominates daytime thinking. This can lead to creative insights and novel solutions that the logical mind would dismiss as impossible or irrelevant. Researchers have found that people who dream about a problem they're working on often perform better when they return to it, even if the dream doesn't directly depict the solution. The dream doesn't need to be literal or obvious. Often it's the underlying pattern, metaphor, or unexpected connection that matters. Consciousness during sleep operates by different rules than waking consciousness, and that alternate mode of processing can see solutions the waking mind misses entirely, approaching problems from angles that wouldn't occur to the rational, goal-oriented conscious mind. Some people experience synesthesia only under certain conditions, while most synesthetes have consistent, lifelong cross-sensory experiences, where specific stimuli reliably trigger specific perceptions in another sense. Some develop temporary synesthesia during migraines after taking certain drugs like LSD or mescaline, or following sensory deprivation. This suggests that the boundaries between sensory processing streams are maintained by active neural inhibition, and when that inhibition fails or is chemically disrupted, signals can leak between systems that normally operate independently. The brain's normal organization keeps senses separate, maintaining clear categories of sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell. But that separation isn't absolute or permanent. Under the right conditions, anyone's consciousness might briefly blur the lines between seeing, hearing, and touching, offering a glimpse into how profoundly different one person's perceptual world can be from another's, even when looking at the same objective reality. Your attention can only truly focus on one thing at a time. What we call multitasking is actually rapid task switching, the conscious mind jumping back and forth between activities so quickly it creates the illusion of simultaneity. The conscious mind can only hold one coherent thread of attention in focus at any moment. When you think you're doing two things at once, like listening to a podcast while reading, you're actually alternating between them so quickly it feels simultaneous, but you're missing details from both. This limitation is built into how attention works. The brain's executive control systems must select which information reaches consciousness, and that selection process is fundamentally serial, one thing at a time. While automatic processes can run in parallel in the background, breathing, walking, maintaining posture, only one can occupy the spotlight of awareness at a time. This bottleneck shapes how we experience the world, forcing us to sample reality one moment at a time, never quite seeing or experiencing the whole picture at once. Consciousness may generate far less of your behavior than you think. Studies across multiple fields suggest that up to 95% of cognitive activity happens below conscious awareness, in systems you never directly experience. Your unconscious mind handles routine tasks, regulates your body's countless processes, social cues automatically, recognizes faces, interprets body language, and even makes many decisions without consulting consciousness at all. The conscious mind often acts more as a supervisor or narrator than a controller, stepping in only when something unexpected happens or a situation is too novel for automatic systems to handle efficiently. This doesn't mean consciousness is unimportant or epiphenomenal, but it suggests our subjective sense of consciously controlling most of what we do is largely an illusion, a story we tell ourselves. We're passengers who sometimes grab the wheel when things get tricky, believing we were driving all along, unaware of how much automatic processing shapes our behavior, choices, and responses. Some coma patients can feel pain, but cannot show it. Functional MRI scans have revealed that some vegetative or minimally conscious patients show brain responses to painful stimuli, similar to those of healthy, conscious people, even when they cannot move, grimace, vocalize, or signal distress in any visible way. This discovery has enormous implications for palliative care and medical decision-making around brain-injured patients. If a patient appears completely unresponsive, but is actually experiencing pain, standard pain assessment methods, which rely on observable behaviors, fail completely. The gap between internal experience and external expression can be absolute in these tragic cases, raising profound ethical questions about how we care for people whose consciousness remains hidden from view, present but utterly inaccessible to those trying to help them. It forces doctors and families to confront the possibility that what looks like an empty body might still contain a suffering, aware person trapped inside. Blind people dream in other senses. People who lost their sight before age 5 or who were born blind typically don't have visual dreams. Instead, their dreams feature sound, touch, smell, taste, and emotional sensations, building dream experiences from the senses they actually use in waking life. Those who became blind later in life often continue having visual dreams for years or even decades, though the images may gradually fade and become less detailed over time. This shows that dreaming consciousness adapts to available sensory modalities, constructing experiences from whatever materials it has access to. The brain creates dream experiences from whatever inputs and memories are available. And when visual input is absent from development, other senses fill the dream space completely. For congenitally blind dreamers, the question, "What do you see in your dreams?" doesn't make sense or have an answer. Their dreams are just as vivid, emotionally rich, and real as anyone else's, but built from entirely different dimensions of experience, proving that consciousness doesn't require vision to create immersive, believable experiences. Consciousness can be split between two timescales simultaneously. When you're deeply immersed in a movie, novel, or video game, you simultaneously experience the story's timeline and remain aware of real-world, present time passing. Your consciousness tracks both the fictional world unfolding at its own pace, perhaps covering years in the narrative, and the actual time passing as you sit in your chair, maybe just a couple of hours. This temporal multi-layering shows the brain's remarkable ability to maintain multiple frames of reference without confusion. You can be emotionally invested in a character's year-long journey through hardship while knowing you've been reading for only an hour. You can feel the urgency of a film's climactic moment while knowing it's just light on a screen. This flexibility in temporal framing is essential for imagination, memory recall, and planning, allowing consciousness to slip between different times, places, and realities, while still maintaining coherence and keeping track of which layer is real. The feeling of presence requires integrating multiple brain systems. That basic, fundamental sense of being here now, of existing as a point of awareness located in space and time, depends on proper function of many systems working together seamlessly. Vestibular systems tracking balance and spatial orientation, proprioceptive systems, tracking body position and movement, visual systems tracking environment and landmarks, and cognitive systems maintaining temporal continuity, all feed into the sense of presence. When any component fails, presence can become distorted in unsettling ways. People with vestibular disorders may feel disconnected from their surroundings, like they're floating or not quite real. Those with depersonalization disorder feel like they're watching themselves from outside, observers of their own life. The seamless feeling of existing as a single, unified point of awareness in space and time is actually a complex construction, and when the systems building it malfunction, you can feel untethered from reality, present but not present, conscious but somehow not fully inhabiting your own experience. Some people hear music constantly playing in their heads. Musical ear syndrome causes people, often those with hearing loss or auditory nerve damage, to experience persistent auditory hallucinations of music. Unlike earworms, those catchy songs that replay briefly and can usually be dismissed, this is continuous, involuntary, and can last months or years without stopping. The brain, deprived of normal auditory input, generates its own music to fill the silence, like visual hallucinations that can occur in blindness. The songs are typically from the person's past, pieces they heard frequently decades earlier, now playing on an endless loop. This reveals how the brain abhors sensory silence and void. When external input diminishes, consciousness doesn't go quiet. Instead, it fills the void with internally generated experience, maintaining a constant stream of perceptual content even when there's nothing external to perceive. The brain would rather hallucinate than experience true sensory emptiness. Consciousness continues for seconds during cardiac arrest. The heart stopping doesn't immediately end awareness, doesn't flip off consciousness like a light switch. EEG recordings show organized brain activity can persist for 20 to 30 seconds after the heart stops pumping blood. And some near-death experience reports suggest awareness may continue even longer in some cases, though this is harder to verify objectively. During this window, the brain is using its final reserves of oxygen and energy, burning through whatever remains in the tissue. What happens in consciousness during those seconds remains mysterious and difficult to study. Some survivors describe unusual clarity and vivid perceptions, seeing their surroundings from impossible angles or experiencing profound peace. Others remember nothing at all, their consciousness simply cutting to black. The gradual fade of awareness as the brain exhausts its resources is one of the last frontiers of consciousness research, difficult and ethically challenging to study, but crucial for understanding what happens at the boundary between life and death. Infant consciousness is likely more intense than adult consciousness. Babies have not yet developed the filtering mechanisms that let adults tune out irrelevant stimuli and focus on what matters. Every sensation may be overwhelming, vivid, and impossible to ignore or escape. Some researchers and philosophers suggest infant consciousness is like being on a mild psychedelic, with heightened colors, sounds, textures, and emotions flooding an unfiltered awareness that hasn't learned what to pay attention to and what to ignore. As the brain matures, it learns what to filter out, what's safe to ignore, creating the calmer, more selective consciousness adults experience. But in the process, we may lose the raw intensity of early awareness. What infants gain in control, focus, and coherence, they may lose in immediacy and wonder. The world may never again be as vivid, immediate, and overwhelming as it was before we learned to look away, before our brains developed the ability to decide what deserves conscious attention and what can be safely processed unconsciously. Consciousness can be measured by its information integration. Integrated information theory developed by neuroscientist Giulio Tononi, proposes that consciousness corresponds to a system's capacity to integrate information in a way that cannot be reduced to separate, independent parts. The theory provides a mathematical framework for quantifying consciousness, a value called phi, which measures how much information a system generates beyond what its components generate independently when operating separately. By this measure, consciousness isn't binary, present or absent, but exists on a spectrum. Even simple systems might have small amounts of integrated information and therefore tiny amounts of consciousness, while complex systems like human brains generate vast amounts. If correct, this theory could eventually allow scientists to measure consciousness objectively, determining whether patients in comas, animals of various kinds, or even future AI systems are truly aware, and to what degree, finally moving consciousness from a purely subjective phenomenon to something that can be quantified and compared. Some neurological conditions make people deny obvious disabilities. Anosognosia causes patients, typically after right hemisphere brain damage from stroke, to deny or minimize serious impairments in ways that seem impossible to observers. Someone paralyzed on their left side might insist they can walk perfectly fine, that there's nothing wrong with them. Others might deny being blind, despite clear evidence that they cannot see. It's not lying, stubbornness, or psychological denial in the usual sense. The brain regions that would normally generate awareness of the problem are themselves damaged, so from inside that person's consciousness, there genuinely seems to be no problem to acknowledge. This reveals that self-awareness itself, the ability to monitor your own functioning, can be selectively destroyed. The parts of your brain that monitor other parts can fail, leaving you unaware that anything is wrong, unable to even perceive the absence that others see clearly. Consciousness has blind spots about itself, gaps in its own self-monitoring that it cannot detect. Electrical stimulation can make you feel like someone else is in the room. When certain brain regions, particularly in the temporoparietal junction, where the parietal and temporal lobes meet, are stimulated electrically during brain surgery or experiments, people report sensing a presence nearby, someone standing behind them or beside them. This feeling of a presence can be vivid and unsettling, sometimes accompanied by the conviction that the invisible entity has intentions or awareness of its own. The experience is thought to result from disrupted integration of body position signals and motor commands, creating a phantom self, a duplicate that consciousness interprets as another being entirely. This phenomenon may explain some ghost sightings, supernatural experiences, and reports of sensing departed loved ones or spiritual entities. It shows how thin the line is between accurate perception of reality and convincing hallucination, and how easily the brain can conjure entities that feel absolutely real, present and aware when the right circuits are disrupted. Every memory you recall becomes slightly altered. The act of remembering doesn't just retrieve a stored file from some mental archive where memories sit unchanged. It reconstructs the memory from distributed pieces scattered across the brain. And that reconstruction process is vulnerable to current thoughts, emotions, expectations, and context. Each time you recall something, you're actually remembering the last time you remembered it, not the original event itself. Over time, this can lead to significant drift from what actually happened. Memories you recall frequently may change the most, subtly incorporating details from imagination, other people's accounts, or other memories entirely. This fluidity means consciousness doesn't preserve the past faithfully, like a video recording. Instead, it continuously rewrites personal history, making memory more creative and constructive than we typically acknowledge. What you remember is as much about who you are now as it is about what actually happened then. Consciousness might operate partly through quantum effects. While highly controversial and rejected by most neuroscientists, some physicists and consciousness researchers have proposed that quantum coherence in brain structures, particularly in microtubules inside neurons, might contribute to consciousness in ways classical physics cannot explain. The idea is that quantum superposition, where particles exist in multiple states simultaneously until observed, could allow neurons to process information in ways that would be impossible with purely classical mechanics. Critics argue the brain is too warm, wet, and noisy for delicate quantum states to survive long enough to matter. But recent findings of quantum effects in photosynthesis and bird navigation suggest biology might exploit quantum mechanics more than previously thought possible. If consciousness involves quantum processes, it could help explain why awareness feels unified and instantaneous, yet arises from billions of separate neurons, and why the observer seems to play a special role in collapsing quantum states, though this last point remains deeply speculative. Your brain fills in your blind spot without you noticing. Each eye has a blind spot where the optic nerve connects to the retina, a region containing no light-detecting cells at all. Yet you never see a black hole in your vision, never notice a gap in what you perceive. Your brain fills in the missing area based on surrounding information, pattern, and expectation, completing the image seamlessly. This completion happens entirely below consciousness. You don't experience a void being filled or notice any processing. You simply see a complete image, unaware that part of it is pure fabrication. This seamless filling in is happening constantly with many aspects of perception, not just the blind spot. Your brain is always making educated guesses, interpolating missing information, constructing completeness from incomplete data. What you perceive is always partly fiction, though usually accurate enough fiction that you never notice the gap between reality and experience. Meditative absorption can make hours feel like minutes. In deep meditative states called jhanas or samadhi, in various contemplative traditions, some practitioners report losing track of time completely and dramatically. A 2-hour meditation session might feel like 20 minutes or even less. This time, compression occurs because the normal neural mechanisms that create temporal markers, shifts in thought, changes in body sensation, environmental changes, are dramatically reduced or absent. Without these markers, without the usual flow of thoughts and sensations, consciousness has no way to measure duration accurately. The experience suggests that our sense of time passing isn't automatic or given, but depends actively on the mind noting changes and transitions. In a state of unchanging, still awareness, time can become elastic, compressed dramatically, or seem to disappear entirely, revealing how constructed and dependent on mental activity even our most basic sense of duration really is. Consciousness persists in certain brain-dead states more than expected. Traditional brain death criteria focused primarily on brainstem function, but research using more sensitive monitoring has found isolated electrical activity in the cortex can sometimes continue even when brainstem function has ceased completely. Whether this lingering activity represents any form of consciousness is unknown and deeply controversial among medical ethicists and neuroscientists. It raises difficult questions about how we define death, when consciousness truly ends, and what criteria should be used for declaring someone dead. The discovery suggests a gray area between life and death, where some neural activity persists, but organized consciousness may or may not. These findings are reshaping medical ethics and end-of-life care, forcing doctors and families to grapple with scenarios where consciousness might flicker in bodies that meet the legal definition of death, creating heartbreaking ambiguity where we once had clarity. Consciousness can be temporarily expanded by sensory deprivation. In isolation tanks where all external stimuli are removed, floating in body temperature water, saturated with Epsom salt in complete darkness and silence. Many people report their consciousness seems to expand beyond normal boundaries, becoming larger or less confined than usual. Thoughts become more vivid and visual, imagery more colorful and detailed, and the sense of being confined to a body can fade or disappear. Without external anchors, without the constant stream of sensory information normally defining where you end and the world begins, attention turns inward and can access mental states normally obscured by sensory noise. Some find this liberating and euphoric, describing it as the most peaceful experience they've ever had. Others become anxious or disoriented, disturbed by the loss of sensory grounding. The experience demonstrates that much of ordinary consciousness is shaped by continuous sensory input, and removing that input doesn't narrow awareness as you might expect. Instead, it often makes consciousness feel larger, stranger, and less bounded. Animal consciousness may be fundamentally different from ours. When we ask whether animals are conscious, we often mean, do they experience things like we do? But evolution may have produced forms of awareness quite unlike human consciousness in their fundamental structure and content. A bat navigating by echolocation might experience space in ways we literally cannot imagine. A rich auditory landscape where objects have textural sound shapes. A dog, with smell as its primary sense, might have a consciousness dominated by odor landscapes, scent memories, and chemical information we cannot even begin to conceive. Rather than a single type of consciousness that species either have or lack, a simple binary, there may be many varieties, many flavors, each shaped by different sensory systems, brain structures, evolutionary pressures, and ecological niches. Understanding consciousness might require accepting that we cannot fully know what it's like to be anything other than human, that other minds might be so different that translation is impossible. Consciousness can continue during sleepwalking in fragmented form. Contrary to popular belief and older scientific models, some sleepwalkers report fragmentary awareness during episodes when later awakened and interviewed carefully. They describe being partially conscious of their actions, but unable to control them fully, or wake up, like watching themselves from a distance. Brain scans show mixed states, with motor control areas awake and active, while consciousness-related networks in the frontal and parietal regions remain mostly asleep. This creates a zombie-like condition where complex behaviors unfold without full awareness, judgment, or decision-making. The person is neither fully asleep nor fully awake, but caught between states, existing in a hybrid consciousness. These in-between conditions challenge the binary distinction between conscious and unconscious, suggesting consciousness exists on a continuum with many gradations, mixed states, and intermediate levels we rarely experience in normal, healthy life. The McGurk effect shows vision can override hearing. When you watch someone's lips say one syllable while the audio plays a different syllable, your brain often perceives a third, blended sound that matches neither the visual nor the auditory input separately. This multisensory illusion demonstrates that consciousness doesn't passively receive input from separate senses and present them side by side for you to compare. Instead, it actively integrates them into a single, unified perception before you become aware of anything. Vision and hearing inform each other, cross-referencing continuously, and when they conflict, the brain makes a best guess about reality, constructing the most probable interpretation. What you consciously experience is this integrated guess, this synthesis, not the raw sensory data arriving from your eyes and ears. This fusion happens automatically, unconsciously, and irresistibly. Even when you know about the illusion, you cannot stop it from happening, showing how much of perception is constructed through cross-modal integration far below the level of awareness. Consciousness might not be continuous, even when it feels that way. Some theories propose that consciousness operates more like a series of discrete snapshots, like frames in a film, than a continuous stream of experience. Each moment of awareness might be separated by tiny gaps we never notice, because consciousness only exists in the snapshots themselves, not in the gaps between them. Similar to how films create the illusion of continuous motion from separate static frames projected fast enough, consciousness might create the illusion of continuous experience from discrete moments of awareness. If true, this would mean your sense of seamless, flowing experience is itself an illusion constructed by the brain to create narrative coherence and smooth transitions. The refresh rate might be fast enough, perhaps dozens or hundreds of times per second, that no gap is detectable from inside consciousness. But experience would still be fundamentally discontinuous, discrete rather than flowing. Current neuroscience cannot definitively prove or disprove this possibility, leaving open the question of whether your experience of the present moment is truly continuous or cleverly stitched together from distinct pulses of awareness. Out-of-body experiences can be triggered by brain stimulation. When neuroscientists carefully stimulate the temporoparietal junction or adjacent areas in the right hemisphere during brain surgery or experimental procedures, people sometimes report floating above their body, seeing themselves from an external viewpoint, or feeling displaced from their physical location. These induced out-of-body experiences suggest the phenomenon results from disrupted integration of visual information, vestibular signals about spatial orientation, and proprioceptive information about body position. The brain, receiving conflicting signals about body location and orientation, constructs an experience of being displaced from the physical body, viewing it from outside. While this doesn't prove all spontaneous out-of-body experiences are simply brain glitches, it does show that the feeling can be artificially created by disrupting specific neural processes. The stable sense of being located inside your body, behind your eyes, requires constant coordination across multiple sensory systems, and that coordination can fail or be disrupted, creating the uncanny experience of consciousness existing outside its usual home. Higher intelligence doesn't guarantee richer consciousness. Cognitive ability and conscious experience may be partially independent properties of minds. Someone with intellectual disabilities might have experiences just as vivid, complex, emotionally rich, and meaningful as anyone else, perhaps even more so if they're less distracted by abstract thought. Similarly, genius-level intelligence doesn't necessarily mean deeper or more intense awareness. Consciousness seems to require a certain level of neural complexity and information integration. But beyond that threshold, more processing power doesn't obviously translate to more consciousness or richer qualitative experience. This separation challenges our tendency to equate intelligence with inner life, to assume smarter beings have richer experience. A being might think slowly, but experience deeply, processing information inefficiently, but feeling every moment intensely. Or one might reason brilliantly while having relatively simple, subjective experience. The relationship between cognition and consciousness, between thinking ability and experiential richness, remains poorly understood. The brain's energy budget constrains what can be conscious. With only about 20 watts of power to work with, roughly equivalent to a dim light bulb, the brain must be extremely selective about what information receives the expensive process of conscious processing. Most sensory input is filtered out before reaching awareness, analyzed by specialized unconscious systems that only alert consciousness when something unexpected, important, or dangerous occurs. This energy constraint means consciousness is narrow and selective by biological necessity, not design flaw. You cannot be simultaneously aware of everything your brain is processing, all the sensory streams, memory associations, predictive models, and motor plans running in parallel. The spotlight of attention must move from place to place, illuminating small areas while leaving most of your ongoing mental activity in darkness. This limitation isn't a bug, but a feature, allowing consciousness to focus resources where they matter most, while automatic systems efficiently handle the rest. Consciousness can be voluntarily suspended during certain practices. Advanced practitioners of some meditation traditions, particularly in Theravada Buddhism, report being able to enter states called cessation or nirodha, where intentional thought ceases completely and even awareness itself temporarily suspends. These states involve a temporary gap in consciousness, different from sleep or unconsciousness, because the person remains in some sense present, positioned, and can emerge voluntarily after a predetermined time. Brain imaging during these states is sparse and difficult to obtain, but preliminary findings suggest profound changes in default network activity and global connectivity patterns, unlike anything seen in normal sleep or waking. Whether this represents consciousness without content, a complete but brief gap in consciousness, or a radically different mode of awareness that doesn't fit our normal categories, remains actively debated. But it demonstrates that consciousness can be manipulated and controlled far beyond ordinary waking experience through systematic mental training alone. Color perception varies more between people than commonly assumed. Genetic variations in color receptors mean people likely experience colors somewhat differently from each other in ways we cannot easily detect or compare. Most people share enough perceptual overlap that we agree grass is green and the sky is blue, passing basic color agreement tests. But the subjective experience of greenness or blueness, the actual qualitative feel, might vary in ways impossible to compare directly, since we cannot access each other's consciousness. Some women have 4 types of color receptors instead of the typical 3, a condition called tetrachromacy, potentially allowing them to distinguish color gradations others cannot see at all. This means color consciousness isn't universal, but personal, shaped by individual biology. When you look at a sunset, your private experience of those oranges, pinks, and purples exists only in your consciousness and might be meaningfully, perhaps profoundly different from the person standing beside you, seeing the same objective sunset. Consciousness may help predict the future, not just perceive the present. From an evolutionary perspective, awareness might exist primarily to simulate future scenarios and choose actions based on predicted outcomes, rather than simply perceiving what's happening now. Rather than consciousness being fundamentally about experiencing the now, it might be a tool for mentally testing possible futures before committing to action. You imagine asking your boss for a raise and predict various responses. You picture 2 routes home and choose based on expected traffic. You consider different wordings for a difficult conversation before speaking. This constant internal simulation allows flexible, adaptive behavior that automatic reflexes and learned habits cannot provide. If this view is correct, consciousness is less about passively witnessing reality and more about actively modeling what might happen next, giving you a survival advantage through foresight, planning, and the ability to mentally rehearse scenarios without the risk and cost of acting them out in reality. Social rejection activates the same brain regions as physical pain. When people experience social exclusion, rejection, or ostracism in experimental settings or real life, brain scans show activation in areas typically associated with physical pain, like the anterior cingulate cortex and the insula. Consciousness seems to process social pain similarly to bodily harm, using overlapping neural machinery, which makes evolutionary sense. For social species like humans, where survival depended on group membership, exclusion from the group could be life-threatening. The pain of loneliness, rejection, or social isolation isn't metaphorical or merely psychological. It's using the same neural circuitry that makes you pull your hand from a hot stove or cry out when injured. This overlap reveals how deeply social connection is woven into the very fabric of human consciousness, how essential belonging is to our mental architecture. The boundary between emotional and physical pain is less clear than our language suggests, both processed by overlapping systems that generate suffering as a warning signal. Consciousness might extend beyond the brain into the body. Traditional neuroscience focuses on the brain as the seat and generator of consciousness, but growing evidence suggests the body contributes more than previously thought, that consciousness might be more distributed than the brain-centric view assumes. The gut contains hundreds of millions of neurons, the enteric nervous system, which communicates extensively with the brain and influences mood, cognition, and decision-making in documented ways. The heart sends more signals to the brain than the brain sends to the heart, and these signals affect emotional processing and perception. Consciousness might emerge from brain-body interactions rather than brain activity alone. This embodied consciousness perspective suggests that your sense of self, your awareness, includes not just neurons firing in your skull, but physiological states throughout your entire body, all contributing to the felt quality of each moment, the texture of experience. Near-death experiences share common features across cultures. Despite vast cultural differences, religious backgrounds, and personal belief systems, people who come close to death often report remarkably similar experiences. Moving through a tunnel toward light, feeling profound peace, encountering deceased relatives or religious figures, experiencing life reviews, and feeling unconditional love or acceptance appear in accounts worldwide. Skeptics attribute this cross-cultural consistency to universal brain biology, arguing that oxygen deprivation and neurochemical changes produce similar hallucinations regardless of culture, like a common program running as the brain shuts down. Others see the consistency as evidence these experiences reveal something real about death or an afterlife. From a purely consciousness research perspective, the commonality suggests specific neural events occur near death that generate these particular experiences reliably. Whether those events reveal hidden dimensions of reality or simply reflect how dying brains behave uniformly remains one of the field's most emotionally charged and philosophically significant questions. Consciousness can be altered by changing your breathing pattern. Deliberate breathing techniques, like those used in pranayama, Wim Hof method, and holotropic breathwork, can profoundly shift mental states in predictable ways. Slow, deep breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, calming the mind and reducing anxiety. Rapid breathing or specific patterns can induce altered states similar to psychedelics, sometimes called breathwork, with visual phenomena, emotional release, and changes in body sensation. The mechanism involves changing blood CO2 levels and oxygen saturation, which affects blood pH, brain chemistry, and neural activity patterns. This means consciousness can be deliberately manipulated without any external substances, just by controlling something as basic and accessible as breath. The discovery that awareness is so responsive to breathing patterns has made controlled breathing a tool across cultures for exploring different states of consciousness, from shamanic practices to modern therapeutic techniques. Consciousness allows suffering, but also meaning. One puzzle of consciousness is why evolution would create a system capable of experiencing pain, anxiety, grief, and despair, when simpler unconscious mechanisms might drive adaptive behavior just as effectively. The answer may be that consciousness, by creating subjective experience, allows organisms to care about outcomes in a way that drives flexible, motivated behavior across unpredictable situations. The same system that generates suffering also generates joy, love, curiosity, awe, and purpose. You cannot have one without the other, cannot build a consciousness that feels pleasure without also feeling pain. A being that felt no pain might also feel no pleasure, experience no preferences. One that couldn't grieve wouldn't deeply love, couldn't form the attachments that make social life possible. Consciousness creates the possibility of both suffering and meaning. And perhaps that trade-off, that package deal, was worth it in evolutionary terms. The richness of inner life, with all its difficulties and darkness, may be inseparable from the very thing that makes existence feel worthwhile and meaningful. Artificial intelligence might never be conscious, regardless of capability. Even if AI systems eventually match or exceed human performance on every cognitive task we can measure, they might lack subjective experience entirely, might be philosophical zombies processing information without anything it's like to be them. This possibility raises the question of whether consciousness requires specific biological processes, carbon-based cells, or particular organizational principles, or whether it can emerge from any sufficiently complex information processing system, regardless of substrate. Current AI processes information without awareness, responds without experiencing, and there's no clear path from increased computational power to genuine consciousness. The hard problem remains unsolved. We don't know what physical conditions are necessary and sufficient for experience to arise. Until we understand that, we cannot know whether machines can truly be conscious or will forever remain unconscious performers, simulating awareness perfectly without ever experiencing anything, empty of inner life, no matter how intelligent they become. Your conscious mind might be an evolutionary newcomer. The oldest parts of the brain, structures like the brainstem and basal ganglia, responsible for basic functions, regulation, reflexes, and fundamental drives, evolved hundreds of millions of years ago. The neocortex, especially the prefrontal regions associated with complex thought, planning, and self-aware reflection, is far more recent in evolutionary terms, present in mammals, but elaborated to unusual degrees in primates, and especially humans. This suggests consciousness as we know it, especially self-reflective awareness, and the internal narrative voice, might have emerged relatively late in evolutionary history, layered on top of much older systems. Earlier brains may have produced simpler forms of awareness, focused on immediate sensation and action, without the elaborate self-model, autobiographical memory, and future planning humans possess. If so, consciousness has layers built over deep evolutionary time, with older forms of awareness, perhaps more like what some animals experience, overlaid by newer, more sophisticated capacities. The voice in your head commenting on experience, narrating your life, might be the latest addition to a much older, more primal system of awareness. Consciousness might be the universe experiencing itself. Some philosophers, physicists, and contemplatives propose that consciousness isn't a product of matter, something generated by unconscious particles following physical laws, but a fundamental aspect of reality alongside space, time, energy, and matter. In this view, conscious experience doesn't emerge from unconscious processes, like water emerging from the chemistry of hydrogen and oxygen. Instead, the capacity for experience is woven into the fabric of existence itself at the most basic level. Complex systems like brains don't create consciousness from nothing, but rather structure and focus it, concentrate it, the way a lens focuses light that already exists everywhere. This perspective, found in both ancient philosophy and modern physics speculation, suggests that when you look at a star, you're not just matter perceiving matter, particles following laws. You're the universe's awareness turned back on itself, reality knowing that it exists, consciousness recognizing consciousness. Whether this is profound truth, useful metaphor, or beautiful poetry, it captures something many people feel intuitively, that consciousness connects us to something larger than individual minds, something essential and perhaps eternal. The sense of now is always slightly in the past. Due to neural processing delays, the present moment you experience consciously actually occurred a fraction of a second earlier, perhaps 80 milliseconds or more, depending on the sensory modality. Your brain papers over this delay, constructing a seamless now from slightly outdated information, backfilling and smoothing to create the illusion of immediacy. When you catch a ball, you're not reacting to where it is, but where it was a moment ago, though your brain's predictive systems calculate its current location. This means conscious awareness is always a reconstruction, never truly real time. The present moment is a carefully crafted illusion that feels immediate, but arrives with an unavoidable delay, like watching a live stream with a tiny lag. You never truly experience the present as it happens, only the brain's best guess about what just happened, presented to consciousness as if it were now, creating the seamless flow of time we take for granted. Consciousness research may require new physics we haven't discovered. Some researchers argue that consciousness is too different from other physical phenomena, too unique in its properties, to be explained by current scientific frameworks, no matter how detailed our neuroscience becomes. Just as relativity and quantum mechanics were needed to explain previously mysterious phenomena that classical physics couldn't handle, understanding consciousness might require new fundamental theories we haven't imagined yet. This isn't giving up on scientific explanation, but acknowledging that our current toolkit, developed to explain matter and energy, might be insufficient for subjective experience. The alternative is to believe consciousness is uniquely beyond scientific understanding, permanently mysterious, which most researchers find unsatisfying and defeatist. If new physics is needed, consciousness research could eventually drive revolutionary advances in our understanding of reality itself, the way studying light, motion, and matter transformed physics centuries ago. The default mode network creates your sense of narrative self. This brain network, which activates during rest and mind-wandering when you're not focused on external tasks, generates the ongoing story of who you are, what you've done, and what you might do. It maintains the continuous sense of identity across time, linking past experiences to present situations and future goals, weaving them into a coherent narrative. When the default network is disrupted by meditation, psychedelics, or brain injury, the narrative self can dissolve or fragment, sometimes leaving people feeling liberated from the constant internal story, other times leaving them disoriented and unmoored. But this network also serves important functions, allowing autobiographical memory, social reasoning, mental time travel, and maintaining coherent identity over decades. The self you take for granted, that feels so continuous and obvious, is actively constructed moment by moment by specific brain systems. And like any construction, it can be modified, disrupted, or even temporarily dismantled. Consciousness has a quality that cannot be fully captured in language. Philosophers call this the ineffability of qualia, the subjective, felt quality of experiences. You can describe red as a color with a certain wavelength, a specific frequency of light, but you cannot convey what redness actually feels like, the qualitative experience, to someone who's never seen it. The same applies to pain, love, the taste of coffee, the smell of rain. Language points toward these experiences, gestures at them, but cannot transmit them directly from one consciousness to another. This inherent limitation means some aspects of consciousness remain irreducibly private and incommunicable. No matter how precisely neuroscience maps brain activity, no matter how detailed the correlations between neural patterns and reports, the maps cannot convey the felt quality of being you. Consciousness has an interior dimension that exists only in first-person experience and cannot be reduced to third-person description, cannot be fully translated into objective terms. Near the end of life, consciousness sometimes becomes clearer. Some dying patients experience terminal lucidity, suddenly becoming alert, coherent, and fully present after days, weeks, or even months of confusion, dementia, or unconsciousness. They may recognize family members they hadn't acknowledged in years, speak clearly and meaningfully, and seem fully themselves before dying hours or days later. The mechanism behind terminal lucidity is unknown and puzzling to researchers, but it suggests that even when consciousness appears lost or severely diminished, some capacity for awareness may remain hidden, inaccessible, temporarily re-emerging near death for reasons we don't understand. These moments offer profound comfort to families, a chance for connection and closure. But they also raise questions about how much awareness might persist in patients who seem unconscious, how consciousness might be present but unexpressed. They're reminders that consciousness can hide in ways medical tests cannot detect, and that the line between presence and absence, between here and gone, is less stable and more mysterious than it appears. And now, as we reach the end of this long, winding journey through the architecture of awareness, the paradoxes of perception, and the malleable nature of the self, perhaps you feel your own consciousness beginning to shift, the boundaries softening like watercolors bleeding into each other, the thoughts slowing down like leaves falling through still air on an autumn evening. We've explored how fragile awareness can be, how easily disrupted by magnets, chemicals, and tiny brain injuries, yet also how remarkably resilient, adapting to damage, isolation, and altered states. We've seen consciousness as both an illusion and the most real thing in existence, as both a product of simple neurons following chemical rules, and perhaps something woven into the fabric of reality itself, fundamental as space or time. The mystery remains. Even after everything science has discovered, after decades of research and thousands of experiments, consciousness is still the one thing experiencing all the discoveries, conducting all the research, asking all the questions. The irreducible fact of being here, now, aware that you're aware. But you don't need to solve it tonight. You don't need to understand how neurons create experience, or whether consciousness continues after death. In fact, you don't need to hold on to anything you've heard. Let it drift away like smoke. Let it dissolve into the gathering quiet. Your consciousness has earned its rest. The questions can wait. They've waited this long, they can wait until morning. The universe will continue exploring itself through countless other minds, while yours retreats into the soft darkness of sleep, into dreams, into the other modes of awareness that come when waking consciousness releases its grip. If you're still here, listening, still tracking these words, the next video is ready whenever you want it. But if your eyes have already closed, if the words have become just sound, just rhythm, stay there. Don't come back. Let go completely. Let consciousness do what it does best when the day is done. Fade into dreaming. Become the mystery yourself. Rest.